Excellent. What better Christmas than the one we've all had, right?
That is
Being
true.
Tired of
able
Zoom.
to get together with all of our friends, you know,
Well, I will
kiss
say,
them, hug them.
yeah, I will say this year for me seemed a little bit more special with the ones I was with. So compared to others, it wasn't so rushed through it. So we made the most of our time. So hope you all did too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they're okay.
My hubby and I made the most of our time.
That's good. If I can get you all to remember to rename yourself, just where you're at in the process, whether you're a CPP or you're declaring or if you're a liaison, that would be helpful so we know who's speaking at the time. Yes, if
Rename.
you look at the upper right hand corner, there's a box with three dots. I'm sorry, at the upper right hand corner of your uh, specific box.
Oh, okay.
And
Oh, I
there's an
got you.
option there
Okay.
to rename.
All right. And what would you like to call me? I'm working
Just
on it.
yeah, if you're have just declared or if you're a CPP and just kind of sitting in with us, or if you're a liaison and wanting to help, all comments are welcome. So, welcome everybody. Chuck has changed his background. He's no longer Santa Claus.
Wonderful.
How was that midnight ride for you there, Chucky?
Ha! Tiring, a little bit cold too.
Yeah,
Those after all the milk and cookies, those last couple chimneys were a little difficult to squeeze through.
yeah, I imagine so. Imagine so. So, we'll start out here with anybody who is a candidate that has maybe some questions that we can start working on right away. Ron's back with us. He's looks like he's driving. Welcome back, Ron.
You're on.
Hey,
Yeah,
Ron.
Chris,
Yes.
Mr. Now he's Mr. Pass the Test up there. He was working on his images and he had a problem. And I discussed it a little bit with Ron last week and I asked him, Steve, to come and join us and show the images. He's getting a shadow from his tripod and camera from the fill light.
Oh yeah.
I
I
had
remember
never
that.
I have never had a problem with that before, so maybe you have. Ron hadn't either. So Steve can show us the image if you'd like, and we
Yep.
can talk a little bit about it.
Do I need to allow you to share your screen there, Steve?
I don't think so. I got to pull it up. I thought Skip had already shared it with you, so I didn't pull it up.
Okay.
You
But
never
let me
sent
go
it to
get
me.
it.
Steve, you never sent
I
it to
did.
me.
I sent it to you. I did.
I
I
never
sent it.
received
I emailed it to you.
I never received it.
Oh, okay. Okay. Let me see. Make small.
I think Ron is fading in and
No.
out because he's gone again.
Yeah, he's driving, so he's relying on cell towers. You know those Ohio cell towers, they don't get you very far.
Skip
And who's the young
mannequin.
lady down below in the bottom? I don't see a name.
That was Jen, and she just put in the chat where she's at in the process.
I don't see it yet. Oh, she put it in the
In the
chat.
chat, yeah.
Okay.
Oh.
So,
Okay.
this is just with a fill, and I know perfectly well why it's doing it. The camera is a gobo. So my question was, with something as small as Sherman, as long as I've been around, I would never put a light right behind the camera for him. So I'm kind of curious about why you're having us do that. I have ultimately moved the light just a scooch to the right so that I got rid of that, but it's not working for me as a fill light that
So
way.
the image you're showing us right now is only the fill light. Is that correct? Okay. I just
Yes.
wanted to be sure that we knew what we were looking at.
All right. Is
Um,
it almost looks like let me see. Oh darn. That
Real
I
was
quick,
see
Mary,
the,
I got one more real quick kind of important question. What lighting scenario are you using there?
I'm using speed light slights for this one. It's a flash.
Okay, so you're using the strobe. Okay.
Yes.
And then with your main light on, number one, so you have, so that you have not submitted any images at all, right? Okay.
No, I've got them ready to go, but I shot them a little bit differently than fill light directly behind. I moved it to the right just a little
Right.
bit.
So
And I
they
can
will,
do it to you too.
depending on how far to the right, they will be able to tell that your flash is a little bit off center, which I think is okay. I don't think you'll get smacked on the wrist for that. Um,
You want to see them?
like what?
yeah, we can. Yeah,
yeah, I
I,
think I see the shadow from your tripod right smack in the middle.
right.
Uh,
So here the shadow is not as extreme, obviously, because you got the main light on.
Yep.
Right.
I don't see anything there that would preclude. I don't see anything different from any passing image that I've seen before.
yeah,
Put it that
just at
way.
a quick glance, once you turn the fill light or the main light on, I don't see uh,
The shadow.
the
I can
shadow.
see. Yeah, I can see it kind of at the base of Sherman where it's not normally there.
The one thing
Um,
I do notice is I can see a shadow from the Sharpie and the crayons going off to camera left
Yep.
up.
That's
And that,
because the fill light moved.
that's still like now. When you had your tripod set up, did you have one leg pointing right directly at Sherman?
No, I tried to scoot it around, but if you look back, you're looking at the camera itself as the shadow. I would have to get out of this. I don't know. But you're looking at the camera itself shadowing Sherman, not the actual legs of the tripod.
or could it be you?
Nope, 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 nope. I'm on the cable off to the side.
Okay. All right. That was my question.
Have you ever seen that before, Chuck?
No. What is the height of your fill light?
Well, it was the same height as the main. And I did that because Jamie did that in his demo video.
Is it on the floor? Are all of the objects placed on the floor?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, no, I've been shooting pictures for years, and I've never, for something this small, put a fill light right behind the camera just for that reason, because the camera becomes a gobo and it doesn't help. So I was just curious. I wanted to ask Skip what the rationale was. I know that people light their portraits that way, but people are a lot bigger than Sherman, and the soft boxes that they use to light their portraits are 4x6 are much bigger than the 32-inch umbrella that I use for this. So you can get away with it that way, but I can't see it working here.
Yeah, I can tell you when it comes to the rationale, we are completely clueless. That was not shared. That has never been shared with us.
Okay.
All we know is this is what they're looking for.
Okay.
Now, when I did mine, because they say they have to be a minimum of your lights have to be a minimum of 3 feet off the floor.
30 inches.
They can be higher.
Right.
And I had mine considerably higher so that I was shooting over my camera and tripod.
I did that too. I had it up to probably 8 feet, but I discovered with it at 8 feet right behind, I could not get the value along the edge of that damn black cap to come up to 5, much less be beyond it, until I moved it lower and just to the right of the camera.
Yeah, I definitely did not go up that high. One, because I didn't see a reason for it, and I never would have been able to reach the light up that high anyway.
Okay, well,
Standing on the ladder.
I kept shooting him. I kept raising it and shooting it until I saw just a hint of a shadow on the bottom edge of mannequin number one, and I felt at that point that I was clear to go. But the total motivator for me to move that damn light was the black cap on the Sharpie. I could not get it the lower end into the 5 area. I saw these little blue dots all along here every time. So my only solution was to move it to the right, and they went away.
Yeah, because I'm looking at this, and one of the things they check for is direction of light.
Yep.
They can easily see the direction of light for the main is directly across from Sherman.
Right.
But then they can also see that the fill is not directly behind the camera.
Yep. So, but it's not that far off, Chuck.
Yeah, it's not that far off, but
And I don't know that it's far off enough for them to judge it negatively. So here's why I say that. I just opened up my image of the portrait image, not the landscapes. I didn't do anything with the landscapes. And I looked at the shadow at the base of Sherman, right by his feet. And the only difference I see between mine and is it John? Yeah, Steve. So is that the shadow is on mine is just a little bit thinner on the left side of the base. It's not even, I wouldn't even be able to tell.
Yeah.
What they want to be able to see is you do have a main light in the direction of the main light and a fill light in the direction of the fill light. So
yeah, I'm gonna
I think
mine real quick.
I don't know this one that you're showing me how high your light was, because you said you tried different heights. I would try. I don't know how, and I don't know how much far to the right you actually were.
I
would try to eke it back a little bit more towards center if you could, and up higher and see what the difference is, whether you like the difference or not.
Okay.
Chris,
I
I
just
just looked at the spec, and I wanted to make sure what the wording said. And the wording says behind the camera. It does not say directly behind the camera. It says behind the camera. I just read it.
Right.
And consequently, his fill light is behind the camera.
When you're right, correct. I get it, and that is correct. And that's where I say I wouldn't. I'm not the one judging, so I can't say, you know. But I don't see anything there that would say that your fill light placement is incorrect.
Yep, it is behind the camera. It's very obvious it's behind the camera.
When I shoot my portraits with the fill light behind the camera, it's above my head, and it's probably about 15 degrees off of the camera axis. It's not very much. So, I mean, that may be what they're looking for.
Well, your subject, if you're shooting a studio portrait, is further away than what, the 2.5, 3 feet we were from Sherman when we shot this.
You are correct.
So you've plenty of room for the shadow to fall off in the foreground and for the subject to be filled.
Right. But I think, well, remember, they did that for a reason. It's not that they don't want to see a shadow. They actually want to see a shadow. They want to see what direction of light you're using.
Okay. All right. They don't necessarily want to see two shadows. And they
When
wouldn't.
you say two, are you referring to the one that's falling off the ball and the one that's coming off of Sherman, or what are you referring to?
I would almost expect to see like a shadow let's pick the middle one. I would expect to see a shadow behind Sherman there and behind the ball, shadow off to the right. What I would not expect to see with the light right behind the camera or close to it, let me switch over so I can see this, is a double shadow across the nose. That's what people were trying to avoid when they went to the fill light behind the camera. They didn't want two shadows, one on one side of the nose and one on the other.
Right, but I don't know that you're going to get a double shadow um, on a mannequin head.
No, but you would on a person.
So I think when I say that you're when they're looking at shadows, they are looking at the shadows, and this is why they want the gray paper. Again, this is all pure speculation because I have not been told.
Okay.
But I would assume the reason they want the gray paper is that way they can see more easily your shadows on the paper to tell what your direction of light is.
Okay. So the other question I've got related to gray paper, are they going to take a dropper and put it on a spot right in front of that black magic marker on each one of these and make sure that the gray is exactly the same exposure?
So you're talking about the values that they mentioned in the specs?
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
the values in the specs are all within tolerances.
Yep. So what we say as liaisons and how we were taught and we kind of self-taught ourselves, we ask questions through PPA, that they give you clues in the specs as to where they're going to be reading the values from. For instance, you have to have a white ball.
Yep.
There's no question about it. You have to have a white ball, and there's obviously there's a highlight side of the white ball.
Right.
You have to have it says specifically in the instructions, you have to have the black cap on the back of the Sharpie marker, and in the way that it's laid out, the black cap is in the shadow.
Right.
So that tells me that they're going to be reading the black values, dark values on the cap of the Sharpie somewhere in there.
Yep.
Somewhere in there.
Yep. Yep.
And then also the only crayon that's specified that has to be in the crayons is the black crayon.
Right.
And the only mid-tone in the black crayon is the label.
Right there.
Now,
So that tells me that they're going to read the value of the midtones on the label of the black crayon.
Right.
yeah. Now, Julia has put out the information that they're looking at the highlights and the aspects of the ball, the midtones and the aspects of the crayons, and the shadows and the aspects of the Sharpie.
Okay.
To answer your question, Steve, I would say no, because there's nothing in the specs that says the exposure of all three images have to be the same. As long as you meet those specs. And I think your question was, does the gray in each image have to be the same value? And I would, as far as the background, and I would say no, because there's nothing in the specification that says all three images have to have the same exposure.
Okay.
Oh, but if I may, I mean, I have not done the image evaluation test or anything, but I know that the difference, I think, between the two horizontal images is essentially the depth of field, right?
Yes.
And so I think that I don't know because I haven't done the test recently or anything. And so I would imagine that you would leave it at the same exposure, same everything exactly, except for the depth of field. And so, and maybe you might have to change some of the parameters of your camera settings, I guess.
Yeah,
But
you definitely have to change the parameters because the minimum depth of field is taken at f5.6.
Right.
The maximum depth of field is taken at f16.
right.
So you have to change something to keep the exposure.
The lights have to change.
The lights or your ISO, something has to change.
Okay.
Because you got to maintain your equivalent exposure.
Yep. Right. So
Yeah, but the
I'm
point
reading
was-
that. Go ahead. Go ahead, Skip.
Yeah, the point was whether the background has to be the same exposure, right? Wasn't that your question? And
Yes.
that is
I
not
would say no.
necessarily so.
Because
Okay.
if you go through the checklist, it doesn't mention anything about exposure of the background other than the shadows fall off as you go away from Sherman. That's the only
Okay.
thing it mentions about the background other than it being there. You can't have any floor showing outside it.
All right.
Basically, what I do with people is I go through the checklist. And if you are satisfied after going through that checklist that your images meet all the criteria, I'm not going to disagree with you.
Okay. Okay.
I'm not the one who's grading them. So
Right.
my agreement or disagreement doesn't really matter. But I know that that checklist, and this is what we've been told, they're using that checklist to judge all of the photos.
Okay.
If you feel that it passes according to that checklist, submit them.
Okay.
Go for it.
All right. I think I'll probably send these up. I mean, if they can say no if they want to, that's okay.
So, hey, Chuck, just real quick without going through the checklist. Do you agree with me? I see nothing in the shadows of these images that would be in violation of anything in the checklist.
I really don't, because I just looked at mine, and even though I had my light right behind my camera, the shadow from my fill light wasn't exactly right behind it. So it's behind the camera. Now they show, in all of Jamie's videos, he has it directly behind the camera, but they don't specify that. I look at it and I can see from the direction of light, your main light is to camera left, your fill light is behind the camera.
Yep.
That tells me, my opinion, the direction of light is correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep, I would agree.
One of us will be reviewing Steve's images before he sends them in. So, but
Hey,
he
Steve,
had
I
that
do have
question.
one real quick question and maybe a suggestion. When did you shoot your images?
Over the weekend.
Okay. So one suggestion that we have been making, and I think you fall within the parameter. No, we said the 5th. One suggestion we've been making as liaisons is if you shoot your images within 90 days of the next session, not the one you want to submit, but the next session, so that if something comes up where you have an image that does not pass, but you would have had one that passed in that time that you shot it, you can use that image still. You understand what I'm saying?
I think so.
So there's a session that's in February, and then again in, I have to look at the,
April, I think.
yeah.
Every other
It's
month.
just real, they're kind of close together. So if you go for within 90 days of the second session, you have actually now 2 opportunities with that same image.
I thought that the rule was that you did not have to repeat an image, and that once it's
That is
detected,
correct. If you have an image that passes,
you don't have to think
you
about
don't have to redo it. But if you have one image out of the 3 that does not pass, if you go to resubmit, the second submission has to be shot within 90 days. So, like, I'll give you for instance. So on my my portrait versus landscape image, I shot off the background just a smidge. In fact, it was so little that I didn't even notice it until they said something. And I had 3 sets of eyes on my images, and nobody said anything. So I went back through my images and I found one from that same shoot. I found one that had the same shooting criteria. It met all the criteria, but it didn't. I didn't shoot off the background, so I didn't have to reshoot the whole thing. I just chose one of those images and resubmitted. So that may be something you want to think about a little bit. It's kind of I don't foresee a problem with your images. I can't tell you they will pass. I don't foresee a problem with your images. But it may just be something that you want to think about.
Yeah, okay. Well, when's the earliest that I can submit them? Is it the actual 5th? Is that the earliest I can do it?
Yes, sir.
Yep.
At noon
Okay.
Eastern time.
The
All
5th
right,
of
so
what?
I don't-
You will get an
January.
email from PPA, Stephen.
Sorry?
You will get an email from PPA telling you how to submit them.
Okay. All right. Well, I am probably going to submit these as they are
Yep.
and let it.
You will have them reviewed before you submit them, though.
Okay. Well, what are you going to do that you haven't seen now?
We're going to go through the checklist.
Okay.
Yeah, we would do a formal go through the checklist with you.
All right. Then I'll get information from you, Skip, on who I should send them to, and we'll just set it up.
Oh, you don't have to send them
I'll-
to anybody.
Yeah, you won't send them. I'll get with you, Steve. We
Okay.
got time. I'll get with you.
All
We'll
you'll
work it.
do is you'll pull them up just like you're doing here. You'll pull them up in RAW, in Adobe Camera Raw, and walk through that checklist to show that everything, there's 10 boxes that you have to check off on that checklist.
Okay.
And we just walk you through the images and let you show us how you can check off each of those boxes.
Okay. All
We'll
right.
talk about it, Steve. No problem.
All right.
Steve was one of my
Okay.
candidates. Deborah, do you have any questions or any comments?
I do not. I'm just waiting to resubmit that one image. And was that Chris talking about that little piece,
Yep.
the edge? I did the same darn thing.
It's
And-
frustrating because you may when you're shooting it, it's very probable you won't see it because most cameras have a 98% viewfinder or less. And so what you see through the viewfinder actually is on the background. And, if I was doing it for client work, I would either crop it, they wouldn't notice, or I would put the background in there and they wouldn't notice and it'd be done. But it is something in the checklist that I missed. I mean, I was looking at the back of the background, not at the foreground. So
Yeah, I did too. In my Andy looked at it, and neither one. We were so busy looking at the points, and I was so proud that I had it all there.
mhm.
I didn't even look in that top left-hand corner.
Right.
So I've reshot it, and I'm going to send it on the 5th,
Yep.
and hopefully we'll be done.
That's
And see,
awesome.
That's
And
one of the
Virginia will have-
reasons why we
Virginia
use
will
that
have-
checklist, because if you just look at them, you'll look for specific things, but the checklist forces you to look at every aspect that they're going to be checking.
Sure.
Yeah,
Did
but
you
that
know-
checklist didn't say anything about that top left-hand corner. I
Because
should have
it
seen
has
it.
to be all on the background.
I mean, now I can't unsee it. I look at
That's
it,
right.
I can't
Yeah.
unsee it.
It's a big booger right on the end of your nose. No.
And that was the easiest one for me to shoot. That's what kicks my butt. That
Right.
was the easiest one to shoot, because the other ones, I'm a little short, and I was using a step ladder on a couple of them, and because my tripod was giving me some issues. But the other two I found much more difficult as far as getting it placed to where I needed it to be. And I was trying to stay in that 70 millimeter range, and I just hate myself for that, but it'll come.
And in February, the state of Virginia will have 2 more CPPs.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome.
We're working really hard in Virginia to double those numbers that that Brian Welch put out there for all the states in the CPP. So
Wow, that'd be awesome.
we're working on a big program for that.
Sure,
You betcha.
sure.
I should pull up a different background just for Chuck's enjoyment. So I'll do that. Just you go ahead. You don't need to look at my pictures anymore.
So, any other questions we can answer about the test, about submitting images, about making sure that you're ready for if you have to recertify?
I just joined. I was in my car, if you probably noticed when I
okay.
first joined.
Welcome.
But thank you. And I'm new to this, but I'm planning on taking the test in January at Imaging USA
Okay.
to the class prior. But should we go ahead and order the kit now? Is that a good idea for the image submission so we can start practicing? Is that?
Yeah, I mean it's not very expensive. The criteria are out there to grab it. It won't hurt you. I know that one thing that I ran into is I took the class and the test imaging 2 years ago, and it was the first time that they needed you needed to use Sherman, and they ran out of the backdrop paper at Blick, so there was all kinds of issues with that. And so if you get yourself early on the train that way, it may help you. The other thing I'm fortunate about is I have a Blick in my neighborhood. I can drive to a Blick, so I can meet all the specifications and go into the store. But that may be difficult with COVID anyway. But so yeah, and watch when you order your kit. The way they have it set up at PPA is the paper in the checklist has a quantity of one, and the way that you understand it by looking at it is that would be included in the kit, that you would get all 3 sheets of paper. You need to change the quantity to 3. That's how I found out I have a Blick in my neighborhood, because I had to go buy 2 more sheets of paper.
Katie, where are you located?
I'm in Melbourne, Florida.
Oh, I'm in Orlando.
So I have a question. The background paper, is that the gray we supply ourselves, or is that included in the kit?
The specifications for it are in the kit, although Blick has been given some latitude in the different grays based on the first submission of Sherman's. They were unable to supply enough, so they had to get some extra different colors. So some of them were darker.
I have the fashion gray paper. Is that acceptable?
I would order what it says on
whatever it says. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I would do that too, because they have a specific dimension that they want you to have.
Okay.
So 3 sheets all the same size, and
Oh,
they
this
want
is
you
for
to
the
let
bottom,
that-
not for the background, or is it the same?
the bottom is the
And the background. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll cross that bridge soon.
Yeah, those 3 sheets, because you have to lay them out almost exactly by the specifications in order to get specifically the portrait print.
Okay.
Because if you had a roll of fashion gray paper, yeah, it would be so much easier to do it. Because it'd be almost impossible to go off the background. But that's why they specify you have to have those 3 sheets.
Okay.
And they want to see the seams to see that you have 3 sheets.
Gotcha. Okay, well, it's a challenge. Oh boy.
Great.
So I missed the whole thing about the shadows, but I mean, it's okay. You don't have to go back. Looking, it was 2 shadows.
It's
You
it's
see
not
them
as
again?
difficult as it's not as easy as a lot of people make it out to be.
Yeah.
It really isn't. You have to know what you're doing, but it's not super difficult.
Right.
Hell, I passed it. It took me 2 tries. I passed it. But
Yeah.
hey, I was one of the ones that I did not fail a single image on my first submission. I failed all 3 of them.
Well, that's comforting to know, I
Okay.
guess.
Well,
Yeah, there's many of us that it took multiple attempts.
when Chris and we were in the first group to ever submit for Sherman, they didn't have a checklist. They didn't have anything specific as to this is what we're looking for in the highlights, the midtones, the shadows. They just said it's got to be properly exposed. Figure it out.
Right. The exposure was not a part of the checklist, so they made that. But there was a checklist.
Yeah, there was,
And,
but all it
and the
said
checklist
was,
has changed significantly since that time.
and it's
Remember-
gotten
So-
better.
It
Okay,
was
so I
It's
guess-
based on that first submission.
Remember,
I guess my
Chuck,
question is, and you all might, I'm sorry if sounds like a stupid question. But when you shoot it, a lot of times I'm not looking at my highlights are in this range. And I mean, I'm just eyeballing, when I usually shoot with my studio strobes, I don't get that detailed about 256 or whatever. So is that in the Photoshop or the Lightroom histogram? Is that
It's
where
in your Adobe Camera Raw.
Adobe Camera Raw histogram?
Yep.
Okay.
I'll tell you, when I did my first set, they just said it had to be properly exposed. And so I had Sally Kohler look at mine. We both looked at them. And what we were looking for, proper exposure, is there detail in the highlights? Can you see the texture of that ball in the highlights? The answer was yes. Is there detail in the shadows? We looked all through the shadows. We could see the detail. Like, yes. According to what we had known, my exposure was good.
Yep.
All 3 of them failed because they were underexposed.
But you know what, Chuck? Here's what I pride myself in. We are on the ground floor of teaching everybody how to do this.
Yes.
So we learned the hard way about how not to do this.
Yeah, we
Remember,
learned the hard
Chuck,
way. I mean, I'm
that
not sure
checklist
who was
isn't
more
available.
upset when I failed, me or Sally.
I know. She was
Remember-
helping me too. She was the same way.
remember, guys, the orientation on the first submission was different than it is now.
That's
too.
true.
And that's
Yes,
why
that
I
is
failed.
correct too.
That's why mine failed.
That was
Everything
very
everything was
very
portrait on it.
controversial as well.
Well,
So-
I printed out the guidelines, and I had to stop for a while. And when I went back, I just pulled out my printed copies and did them. And that was when they changed from the portrait orientation to the 2 horizontal orientations. And I submitted them all in portrait orientation.
Yep.
So
real quick,
the one lady, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to step on you.
no, go ahead, Gene.
Well, the one lady, I'm sorry, I'm on an iPhone, so I have to flip around to see everybody's names, but she mentioned that, she was having trouble with her tripod, getting the view from above. So what do you mean you were having trouble with your tripod, how were you having trouble with your tripod?
It was just awkward for me. Some of the gentlemen that are much taller, they're able to get over and I was using, I didn't have the microsync piece, and I was using a remote that was on a cord, and it was just a little awkward for me, and I'm older, and I found it a little more difficult, whereas standing straight behind the camera, it was so much easier. But and I did have a lens that was receding on me a little bit. Sometimes so we have some older equipment. I'm switching over to, because of my age, a lot of the micro 4/3 lenses and cameras. but we are a Canon shop, and I was having a little trouble with the 24105, and also it was just a little awkward for me. But most people can do it just fine. It's probably my age and the arthritis.
Well,
I
I'm
had
I'm
Yeah.
I'm 5'2", 5'1" now, but I'll probably have to use a little step ladder then, I guess, right? I mean,
That's
is that
what I did. And
Yeah,
Bonnie
okay.
Madre said she did the same thing. She's about my height. So we're about the
Uh-huh.
same, 5 foot, 5'1".
I did it too.
I'm
Yep.
5'4". I had to stand on a step ladder, and I had the same problem with the 24-105 lens. It kept creeping.
Creeping. Yeah.
I found a fix for it looking on YouTube. I took a
Well-
ponytail holder and wrapped it around the part where it moves, and that added enough extra friction to hold it in place.
Well, that's good to know. I should have talked to you before I tried to do that.
Because yeah, I had that. It was driving me nuts. I would have it set
Mm-hmm.
perfect, and I was using a wireless tether, so I'd go back to my laptop to shoot it, and I'm like, why is it zoomed in so much?
Yep.
I was using camera tape to keep mine from dropping like that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of different ways, but it's what I had to do, and yeah, I had to
That's something that's
stand on a ladder to get over it.
That's what you get for using good glass, Chuck.
Ah, well,
Solution I came up with was to use my 85-18.
Hey, Debbie, you're a
Okay.
youngster. I know. By the way, real quick, Stephen Radcliffe,
Sir,
you know you can't submit those 3 images that you displayed, right?
I do not.
Yes, the
Why
images
can't- why
have
can't
to
I-
be raw images, not DNGs.
Oh, well, they
Have
are
to be
raw.
CR2s. Yep,
Okay.
straight out of camera.
Oh yeah, I didn't
Yeah.
even notice that.
Yeah, those you showed were DNGs. They gotta be CR2s in your case.
What about
Bummer.
NES? NES?
NES, yeah.
NEF for a Nikon, yes.
right. Whatever your
that-
camera raw is how they have to be submitted.
And they can be compressed raw images. In fact, they actually ask you to use the most compression you can use for your raw
Yeah,
file.
the smallest raw image your camera will produce.
Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah, but I noticed that, Steve. Keep that in mind. They have to be raw CR2s in your case.
Well, they are still on the camera card, so
You're good.
then I'll keep track of the
There you go.
numbers, and I
Yeah, because that's one of the things that Sherman does as opposed to the old way, is it shows that you can take the picture that they want and not take a picture and then make it look how they want
yeah, sure,
by editing.
yeah,
It's either right or it's wrong.
right,
Right,
sure.
right.
It's like going to court with a photograph. You got to prove it wasn't altered.
Yeah,
The
Yeah,
one
the
tip
old-
that we kind of have talked about, or several people have talked about, as far as using a cable release. I shot mine tethered the computer, and if you're
Yeah.
using most software programs that allow you to tether, allow you to fire the camera from the keyboard.
Right.
So I was, 4 feet away from my camera when I actually shot my images. So if you do any tethering, that may be a way to do it easily without a remote cable.
Okay, so
yeah.
so what
That's
I'm
how I did mine, except I didn't have a room where I had a Sherman set up, so I had my laptop in another room. So I had to run back and forth between rooms.
Chucky was getting some exercise.
I was.
all right. Okay, so Dan.
Just a
All right,
quick
all right.
a question about that tethering. When I switched from Canon to the Mark IV, from the Mark II to the Mark IV, you can't use the cable anymore, so you have to do it wireless. Does anybody else have an issue that gets complicated sometimes? Does anybody have a Mark IV Canon?
We
Mark IV doesn't have a USB port on it.
No. You have to do it wireless.
Huh.
Well, it
We're
helps the
still
Mark IV.
using the old timey micro sinks, and they work on that camera. They're hard to get. I don't know that. I think they're out of business. So when we break up all of those, I don't know what we'll do, but that's what we're using is micro sinks.
Yeah, I use the Camfi wireless tether on mine, which I use all the time. But I also found a free program. I'll have to put it in the chat. Let me see what it's called, if I can find it. But anyway, it works with a Q DSLR dashboard. I'll put that in the chat.
Yeah, but
And
you
that
still have to connect that to your camera with a USB, right?
No, that one, it'll work with the, if your camera, like my Canon 6D has Wi-Fi built into it.
Oh, okay.
And this DSLR dashboard will connect to the Wi-Fi in the camera and allow me from my laptop to control everything but the zoom.
It's like
Okay.
the same thing as the Cam Ranger.
Right. It's like
That's
the
what
Cam Ranger or the.
That's what I use. I got
yeah,
a Canon 5D Mark II, and I use the Cam Ranger.
Yeah, I have the Camfi, which is a Cam Ranger for truly cheap people, or it was at the time I bought it. And then I found this other program that is a free program that works with the Wi-Fi in the camera. So
There we go.
I'll put the information on that in there. It's not the easiest thing to set up, but it works. I've used it.
So would a Mark II, that I still have my Mark II, and you can connect, it has a connector place on the camera for the cord. So would that be, maybe I could use the Mark II rather than the Mark IV, even though the resolution isn't as great? Does it matter?
Probably not. I mean,
I don't think they
usually,
judge you on the resolution.
yeah, I use a 6D.
Okay.
All right. Good questions. Does anybody else have a question before? Because I want to get to the question we posted in our discussion on the Facebook page.
I have
Just one more question.
Go
I
for
had
it.
a hard time finding this group on the PPA site. How do I make sure I'm not going to miss any more Zoom chats? Because I just checked my email because I sent an email, and I happened to see that I was sent a link by the person that I sent the email to, like 2 minutes after 12, and I was in my car somewhere.
Right.
So
We are on every Tuesday at noon, well, noon Eastern time.
Okay.
Always got to clarify that for those of y'all that sit out there on the West Coast. And the link is always the same, number one, but it's also in several different Facebook pages.
Facebook. Okay.
Yep. The one Facebook page you may be familiar with is the study group. What is it? Exam study group. Is that
No,
what
I'm
that's
not.
called?
Not familiar with that.
Yeah, there's some. I can.
CPP exam study group.
Yeah. Can you
Okay.
put, hey, Mary? It sounds like you are viewing it. Can you put the link to that in the chat, please?
Okay.
Or maybe Chuck
Yes,
is. I
I
don't
will.
know.
I will.
Good.
I-
Awesome.
CPP exam study group. If I just put that in the Facebook search, it'll come up.
It should. Yeah.
Okay.
And I
Okay,
also
well,
have
then
it.
that's fine.
Also running it in several other places, and I know that some of the other affiliates are putting it on their page as well. So we're trying to get the word out that we're having, this discussion for people who are trying to get some help. So
Okay, great.
Okay,
Thank you.
my one quick question.
yes,
And what's the naming scheme for the 3 files?
it's whatever your camera. Don't change your camera. So
Okay.
whatever it comes out of your camera.
All right, then we're done. Okay.
Yeah. You can't. There's no manipulation to the file names. What else did they want? Oh, wait a minute. Am I telling you right there? Do you have to rename the? No, you just have to get it in the right slot on the PPA when you upload it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right, they're in order. All right.
Yeah, when you get the email, it'll tell you how to do it. You'll get
Okay.
the email that Friday on the 5th of February. It'll
Yeah.
tell you exactly how to do it.
Yeah,
Alright.
don't touch it. Just get it in the right slot, like Chris said. Chris,
Yeah.
I have a question, and I guess most of us are either Nikon shooters or Canon shooters. So I'm going to stay with the Canon because I'm going to get through this. But I did hear a rumor somewhere that with image submission using the Micro Four Thirds cameras, mine is the Panasonic, that those images weren't being accepted. Is that just that the judges perhaps are not up to speed yet on that, because it is a little different?
No, the issue was early on. They said they gave you a focal length range. They said you had to be between 70 and 100. I think is 105, maybe 100 millimeters on the focal length range.
And it's going
And
to
they
be
took
different.
no consideration for any crop sensors at all.
Okay.
So the initial thought was they were making everybody shoot these on full frame cameras. Well, not everybody has a full camera, and I have both actually. But these images are best suited to be shot in a full frame camera. It came, I guess it was two submissions later. They did say or equivalent focal lengths for crop sensor cameras.
Okay.
So as far as I know, those were the only things that they were saying about crop sensor cameras. They were not denying them. You had to be able to shoot, and you think of a Micro Four Thirds camera, the conversion rate, if you're between 70 and 105 millimeters, you can't get wide enough to make that work.
Right.
That's why they weren't accepting Micro Four Thirds cameras. So, but now it just has to be an equivalent focal length.
Okay, one more question, please.
Yes.
For the image submission, it was 70. There's a range, or because someone said they used an 85 millimeter
Right.
lens. So is there a range? Again, 70
Yes.
to 105 that you can zoom in and out to get the
Yes.
picture.
Yes.
So you don't have to stay at 70. You can
Nope.
go, but if you go to just 85, you could just, I guess, what do you could say, zoom with your feet
Yep.
in and
Use
out.
the Nike Zoom.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All righty.
Like the 10 points that you checked for, that's not available to the rest of us. You guys are liaisons. Get that.
No, it's what you're given. We go through the same exact list that you're given on the PPA website.
Okay. All right. Okay. Good enough. Thank you.
All right. I'm not cutting anybody off, but I'm going to share my screen. All right. So this is a question that comes from the Quizlets cards, and I'm going to share it now. Whoops. Why did it do that? You are screen sharing. Oh, now I'm showing my answers. Get rid of that. So, how can you change the brightness of the background when using a flash?
Open up your f-stop.
No. Shutter speed.
Shutter speed. Right.
Right.
Okay. I got it mixed up.
That is one answer.
Move your light closer or farther.
Yep. So here's the one thing that why I wanted to bring up this question is that there are multiple ways to control the brightness of your background, but you have to think in terms of the PPA test. And we bring this up a lot in this discussion group. They want you to think in terms of the simplest way and the most common way you're going to control your background. And it's also the key to this question is when you're using a flash, and I read that to mean your on-camera flash.
Doesn't have to
Your
be.
on-camera flash? Who has an
Doesn't have to be.
on-camera
I
flash?
don't know whether I can make that assumption.
I used to have a camera that had an on-camera flash. You mean like a speed light on top?
Speed light on top, whether it's connected with a wire, wireless, over the camera or even off to the side.
If
Yeah,
you've
that's
got a
confusing because it could be a studio strobe. Oh, they you couldn't mean that to mean a studio strobe when you say flash. It has to be an on-camera flash.
It could
Right.
be a studio strobe.
any off-camera flash would affect it the same way.
What is it that you call it when you go really slow with the shutter? Pull the shutter, push the, what do you call it?
Drag the shutter.
Dragging the shutter.
Drag the
Drag the
shutter.
shutter.
Yeah, drag the shutter.
Well, if you're out photographing a family in front of the big field of tall green grass and there's a river flowing in the background and you want to be able to see it and it's too bright at 60th of a second, if you take it to 125th, you haven't changed the exposure on your people, but you've helped the background river come in.
Mm.
But that's depending on how much flash you're giving your subject too. If it's
I would
100%,
assume-
then there's no question.
I would
What?
assume that question is asking, how do you adjust the ambient light?
Mhm.
I would have, I mean, I would have thought, well, maybe you can add a light for the background if you want, right? It didn't say anything about whether you could add a light or not. And it doesn't say what kind of flash. I mean, is it a speed light? Then yeah, for example, if you're shooting a band playing in a place like Madison Square Garden or something like that, then you can slow down the shutter, or you can drag the shutter if you want to like a 15th of a second if you want, and then you shoot the strobe and it stops the action, but the background comes out nicely. But it doesn't have enough defining things in the question to be able to really give you an answer, because
It does based on the responses that you have the option to.
okay,
Right. And also, like Chris was pointing out, when they're asking you it, they're really wanting to know what is the quickest, easiest way you can do it. Going and getting another light to light up your background is not the quickest and easiest way.
So the answer that they're looking for
uh-huh.
is change the shutter speed. The longer the shutter speed, the lighter the background will be. The faster the shutter speed, the darker the background will be, because less existing light is captured. So Skip kind of touched on it. They're looking for ambient light in your background. And it also, in this discussion, kind of touches on something that Chuck and I were talking about at the end of last call, where I used to help out fairly large school portrait companies, and you have 350 kids come through your camera in a day, and you have different skin complexions that come through. Well, one of the requirements that yearbook advisors are looking for is that the background on their page, the background brightness doesn't change. So we're going for the opposite as what the question is asking. However, with the different skin tones, we also have to consider how can we change the exposure for the skin tone without changing our background. And with studio strobes, we're working with studio strobes. So that was one of the things. Chuck said that he is able to change his shutter speed to change. Yep. No, I'm sorry. Change his. I'm sorry. He opens up
Aperture.
to be able to do that. But that would also affect your background,
Right.
as much as changing your shutter speed. What other ideas can we use to make sure that we're getting proper exposure for our subject, but our background doesn't change? If we're not going to change our lens opening,
ISO.
Move
That
your
was
subject.
ISO is going to change everything.
True, but
shutter speed isn't going to have really any effect on the foreground, the person.
Correct.
And so I would say to do something like that, you would have to do aperture to let more light in for the subject, and then you would have to go to a faster shutter speed to bring down the ambient light on that background. You'd have to do a combination.
Equivalent exposure, right?
Right. You have to do a combination.
Right. So when we were, working with 300 kids in a day, you got maybe 30 minutes to work through a line of 35 kids. To mess with camera exposures and all that, and then remember to set it back, it was not feasible to do that. And you're also working with very new photographers. So our best solution was to put 2 marks on the ground on our main light. And for those people that had darker complexion, we just move our main light in. It wasn't very much, 2 or 3 inches. And then you shift it back for lighter complected people. So we had a range of where our main light was. That controlled our exposure on our subject. It kept, if you had a hair light, your hair light would come down a little bit in the exposure, because it's not as much, and your fill was still enough to, you would get more of a, which actually helps on darker complected, you get more of a shadow. And also it kept our backgrounds, because our main light was off to a 45 degree, it was not affecting the background as much as my fill light and my background light. So that was the most feasible solution, was to move our main light in and brighten up darker complected people.
Exactly, Skip.
Use the inverse square law there, huh, Chris?
Yes, I did. And actually, to be honest with you, I use the inverse square law on Sherman. I cheated a little bit, because I don't know if you guys noticed it, anybody who's done the images, but the change between your minimum depth of field and your maximum depth of field, there was an exposure shift most image chips and cameras can't handle. So I actually ended up, because you can't control f-stops. You had to keep your f-stop the same. So there was a reason why I needed to move my light, and it was about 3 inches. I calculated how much I needed to move it. It was about 3 inches. So to get the proper exposure. And I was one of those nerds that had to have the same gray across all of my all of my backgrounds. I said, no, I don't want that. I want to make sure it's exactly the same. So
I don't see that as cheating.
Well, there is a distance figure on the setup.
Yeah.
It says, and I'm not sure if it was a minimum distance or if it was a set distance, but I ended up moving my light in about 3 inches and called it quits. I said, I'm tired of working this hard.
Yeah, I did the same thing.
You know,
because I used one of my special tape measures. It said 43. I used an ish tape measure, so it was 43-ish inches away.
for this, I did use a tape measure, but I learned something in the school portrait industry is that my 10.5 size 10.5 shoe is exactly 12 inches when I step heel to toe. So if I need my main light to be 6 feet away, I got 6 foot measure there. It's close enough.
According to the specifications, the main light is an exact measurement and the fill light is an approximate measurement.
Okay.
Yep.
Hey, Deb, you got anything to say about school portraits?
I love them. I love them. We do still cheat a little bit in that we use H&H. We use all the labs. So I love Richmond Camera. I love White House, but each lab does a different thing for me. So H&H is my school. And we still let them do a little bit of color correction.
Yep.
Because it's just me and Andy that do that part, and then Jessica, who used to be the nanny for the children that are now in college, the grandchildren, she shoots sometimes with us. But when we roll with our schools, it's just us. We don't employ anyone else. So we shoot it, we come home, we download it, and we let it go. And then the next morning we're out to do the other one. So our September and October are usually that way. And so we've just found that it's good, and H&H does a great job. They look at it and we just don't have any problems with it. Knock on wood, probably my head. That's what I do. We don't move anything. We set up and we roll. And we're in small Catholic schools, and they require us to get in, and we'll go through 450 kids in 2.5 hours. We're rolling.
Yep, we had several schools that required us to do that. We tried to set it up and by the numbers so that we could convince our schools, our public schools up in Northern Virginia were just huge. And we tried to set it up so that 250 was a max for a day for a photographer, just because we wanted the quality. But, there were schools that wouldn't allow that. We had several in Spotsylvania County that, we would have to photograph the kids at lunch. So they would get double lunches. So we were done in 2 hours, and it was a 1,000-kid school. We would set up 5 wide for that, though.
Where are you located, Chris?
I'm now in Michigan.
You're in Michigan now.
Yeah, I moved here from... I was in Fairfax County. I moved here 2 years ago to take care of my family. So I enjoyed the school I didn't realize how much I would miss it. I enjoyed the school portrait industry. It's a whole different horse. It's just having quality work in 30 seconds per each kid, and working with 40 photographers to train them. I missed that part of it. And then the relationships I had at the school level, I miss a lot of those. I still keep in contact with a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, in our studios, Hayes and Fisk and Real Life, we all work together to some point in the back office. But right. This is why Mary and Jamie are not good with school photography, and Andy and me are not as good with what they do. So you don't take somebody like Jamie Hayes on a school job, because he'll take 15 pictures of that one kid. So whoever's editing and going through these things will kill. So there's a place for everybody. So right. I tell people our studios, Andy and I do $15 packages, and he does $3,000 portraits. So somewhere in the middle. But exactly. There's a place for everybody. And Andy and I love the schools. We enjoy it. We get our stuff done, and we have our afternoons to do what we want to do.
See, where we were at in that market, we had to offer the school sports as well, and then also part of our contract was we had to do the school sport, the sports candids. So it was not uncommon for me to land at a high school for an underclass shoot at 5 o'clock in the morning to set up, go shoot underclass, and then do a candid shoot and then a sports shoot, or vice versa. So I wouldn't get home till 9 o'clock at night, which is probably the reason why I'm divorced. So, so if you're gone that much, my argument was I'm never leaving the state. So, but that didn't fly. So, anyway. It was a great industry. I have some great friendships, and I enjoyed the photography. It was hard, to speak to what Deborah was saying, it was hard to transition from shooting that quickly and shooting 2 images to, doing a package and shooting, 30, 40 images and taking a half hour. It was just odd to me, Even with my seniors, we broke it down to the different types of photography, and I was always shooting the yearbook image, which we shot, 10 images. And I could work through a senior portrait session on my camera in 5 minutes. So I'm like scratching my head. How do I slow down? So, and I'm only doing business headshots right now. So,
Well, that's what you have to do. You have to look at your business model and you have to tailor it to do what you need to do. Even in our high-end studio with Jamie, we have the premise of 20 images in 20 minutes for 20 products. And he has this 20 thing. And we started that way back in 98, maybe 2001, 2002. And he taught that for some time. But it's more than 20 minutes, it's just, but that was that 20 was our model. And you try to hit that the best that you can.
right.
And it does work most of the time.
Right.
But people when you haven't done school photography, it gives them headaches to see how we work. But it gives me a headache to see what he does sometimes.
Yep. All righty. Well, any burning desire questions while we're still here? If not, we can wish everybody a good week and see everybody next Tuesday.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, everybody.
One
Thank you,
second,
guys.
Chris.
Yes.
I got an email today, and I know all of you guys are PPA members, but check your email today. Scott Kirkingan's going to give a pretty good presentation on January 5th on this new bill that went through for the relief for small businesses. So look for that email or ask your counselor to give you that link. You have to sign up, but I know it's January 5th, and it's going to be
Awesome.
Scott. Okay.
I'm seeing
Awesome.
that there's a lot of people out there in the world that don't like the fact that they passed the CASE Act. So I'm curious to what their argument is.
Are you talking about,
Sorry.
Deborah, are you talking about the CASE Act, or are you talking about
The relief for small
COVID relief bill?
The COVID relief.
Okay. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm only speaking to the relief for the small businesses, which
Right.
is part of that.
You mean the PPP?
Yeah.
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 So he studied up on it, and if you have questions, take it to him, and you might get a better answer than just putting it out on Facebook somewhere.
Sure.
And that
Sure, he did.
email was supposed to be on the street by now, Deb?
Huh?
That email is out by now? I didn't get it.
I'll send it to you. Yeah, I got it this morning.
Okay, I did not get it, so I don't know who they sent it to.
Well, I'm just special. No, not.
Oh, that.
It might have gone out to counselors first, maybe.
Oh, probably.
And I try to get that out to the PPA members, but I'll send it.
New federal COVID-19 stimulus package. Is that what that is?
Yep.
Yeah. All right.
Well,
Yeah,
guys,
here.
it's
Yep.
been enjoyable. Have a
All righty,
good happy
guys.
New
We'll see
Year.
you next
Bye,
Tuesday.
Deborah.
Yeah.
Bye, Chris.
Happy New
Thank
Year.
you all very much. Happy New Year.
New
Bye,
Year.
everybody.
Thank you.
Happy New Year. See you next year.